All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're talking about something that is totally changing the game in farming, using cover crops to build healthier, stronger soil.
Just take a look at this field. You see the harvested corn, but in between the rows, there's this amazing green carpet. Now that's not a bunch of weeds, that's a solution. It's a cover crop, and while it looks super peaceful up top, what's happening underneath the surface is this incredible biological dance that's literally healing and feeding the soil.
And that really gets you thinking, right? It brings us to the biggest question of all. What if farming could actually build up the soil instead of just taking from it? That's the huge promise of cover cropping. So yeah, let's get into it.
To really get how this works, you've got to think of cover crops as exactly what they are, a living, breathing blanket for the earth.
But you know, making this kind of shift isn't a walk in the park. As this quote from North Jersey RC&D points out, it takes real knowledge and a whole new mindset. But that big goal, creating a system that can last, is what's pushing all this amazing innovation.
So let's get down to basics. What exactly is a cover crop? Well, simply put, it's a plant you grow for the soil, not for the sale. You plant it in the off-season, and it acts like a living shield that stops erosion, adds nutrients back in, and builds up all that good organic matter.
Okay, so how do you go from a cool idea to actually doing it? Well, the farmers who are really successful with this have a super clear game plan. It all boils down to answering 4 key questions before they even think about planting a seed.
And these are the big 4. First, what am I trying to achieve? Second, what's the main crop I'm going to plant next? Third, how will I get rid of the cover crop when its job is done? And fourth, how am I going to plant it in the first place? Figuring these out up front saves you from some major headaches down the road for sure.
So let's take that first question. Maybe your goal is to deal with compacted soil. You know, after years of heavy machinery rolling over a field, you can get this super dense layer, almost like concrete, called hardpan. It's terrible for roots.
And this is where Nature's solution is just so smart. You use plants like the daikon radish, sometimes they call it a tillage radish, and it sends down these really powerful taproots that act like a biological drill. They just punch right through that hardpan, opening up channels for water, and of course, for the roots of your next crop.
Or maybe your goal is different. What if you want to use less synthetic fertilizer? Well, some cover crops have this amazing superpower. They can literally pull nitrogen, which is like the #1 plant food, right out of the air.
And here's how that magic happens. Plants called legumes, like this clover you see, team up with special soil bacteria. The bacteria set up shop in these little nodules on the plant's roots, and they get to work converting nitrogen from the air into a form the next crop can actually use. It's like having a tiny fertilizer factory running 24/7 right there in your soil. So, once you know your goal, your mission, it's time to pick your champion, the right plant, or maybe even a whole team of plants to get the job done. And this is way more than just guesswork. Farmers now have these incredibly sophisticated tools, like the species selector tool. You can just plug in your location, your soil type, and exactly what you're trying to do, like, say, control erosion or add nitrogen, and boom, it gives you a list of the best cover crops for your specific situation. The options usually fall into 3 main families. You've got your grasses, like cereal rye, which are awesome for creating a ton of plant matter that becomes a thick, protective mulch. Then you've got the legumes, which we just talked about. They're your nitrogen fixers. And finally, the brassicas, with those deep roots. They're your soil busters. A lot of times, farmers will actually plant a cocktail mix of all 3 to get a little bit of everything.
Okay, so you've picked your crop. Now for the nitty-gritty. How do you get it into the ground? And, just as important, how do you, well, get rid of it?
In a no-till system, you need some specialized gear. On the left, that's a no-till drill. It's perfect for planting small seeds like grasses in really dense, narrow rows. On the right, that's a planter. It's all about precision, carefully placing bigger seeds like corn one by one at just the right depth and spacing.
And to plant into all that leftover stuff from the last crop, you need tools that can slice right through it. These are called shark tooth row cleaners, and yeah, they're as cool as they sound. They go on the front of the planter and act like little plows, clearing a perfect path for the seed without getting all tangled up.
All right, now for termination. It sounds pretty dramatic, I know, but it's just the farm term for killing the cover crop so the main cash crop can grow. And there are 2 main ways to do it: chemical, with herbicides, or mechanical, with special tools.
The chemical route is a very common method. A sprayer like this one will apply an herbicide, which kills the cover crop pretty effectively. It leaves behind this dead mulch on the surface that the farmer can then plant right into.
But the mechanical option is really interesting. It often uses a tool called a roller crimper. It's basically a big, heavy drum with these blades that don't actually cut the plant, they just crimp the stems in a bunch of places. That damage stops the plant from getting water and nutrients, and that's what terminates it, all without chemicals.
But here's the catch with the roller crimper: timing is everything. You have to wait until the plant hits what's called the milk stage. This is the point where it's poured all its energy into making seeds, but right before those seeds can actually sprout. If you crimp it then, it can't recover. Go too early, and it might just pop back up. Go too late, and you've basically just planted a field full of weeds for next year. No pressure.
So when all these pieces of the puzzle come together, the right goals, the right plants, the right timing, the results are just incredible. It's about so much more than just protecting the ground, it's about bringing it back to life.
And one of the most amazing signs of a healthy no-till soil is the absolute explosion of life underground. We're talking about earthworms. In these systems, their populations can skyrocket to as many as 120,000 per acre. And every single one of those worms is a tiny little tiller, creating channels for air, water, and roots to go deep into the soil.
And this quote really sums up the ultimate payoff. The soil stops being just dirt and becomes a living, breathing ecosystem. You've got this whole web of bacteria and fungi and all kinds of other organisms breaking everything down, cycling nutrients, and making them perfectly available for the plants to eat. It's a self-sustaining system.
So maybe the biggest takeaway here is this: the key to a more sustainable, more productive future in farming might not be found in the crops we sell, but in the ones we grow just to give something back to the soil. Pretty powerful thing to think about.